So, folks, for our first session, Leadership Lessons from a Legend, please welcome to the stage NBA champion, owner and CEO of Isiah International, Isiah Thomas.
Thank you. Great. So glad you're here.
And I just want all of you to know he was practicing live from New York. It's Zeta Live.
Well, I was telling him a funny story. We tried to get one of the cast members from Saturday Night Live to do it. We have a very good mutual friend. And he was like, oh my God, I'd love to do it, but like it's a total violation of my contract to do something like that. But Isiah, even this morning, seeing the way people react to you is just amazing. And I have a lot of friends who are very well known. Some are athletes, some are not. But it seems different with you, right? It seems like people have this feeling where you're approachable, like you're there and you love it, like you feed off it, to the point where you said, I only like being in places where I can be with other people. Like that's really what I enjoy. And to start at a very high and perhaps too cerebral level for my marketing department, I sort of think of the world, and this is something I've been fine-tuning for a long time. I'm sure a lot of people will argue with me about this, but there's sort of what I call 5 forms of human currency, okay? You've got fame, you've got beauty, you've got athletic prowess, you've got wealth, and you've got great intelligence. And yes, comedy is a subset of great intelligence before everybody tells me that's the 6th. But what I always say is, there's 8 billion people in the world, 7.4 billion people. A lot of people have none. The people who have 1 or 2 of those forms of currency, we all want to be around, right? The people who have all 5, we know them by one name. It's Isiah, it's Jeter, it's Madonna, it's others, right? And you are one of those humans. And to see people react to you is just incredible.
Well, thank you for that awesome compliment.
And by the way, it's only 9 in the morning. I've only had one cup of coffee.
So I think I should just stop right now, and I think I should just leave and say, it was great if I, but really, thank you. And I just say this, meeting some of you here this morning, the gift that I've been given, and it truly is a gift that you can meet someone and whether you spend 10 seconds with that person, you can spend 10 seconds good or 10 seconds bad. But you're going to spend those 10 seconds.
Right, they're not leaving.
Yeah, and I choose to always try to make someone's day because I do understand the position of celebrity, athlete, everything else, and memories that person may have. So if you take the 10 seconds to be kind and nice, you make that person's day. But if you take the 10 seconds to be rude and mean, you can ruin that person's day. So being blessed with having a gift that I can just make somebody's day just by being nice, I'm good with that.
It's awesome.
Well,
that's awesome. And by the way, a lot of people in your position are annoyed by it. We've both seen it many times. It was, and just for me, watching Steve Gerber, my partner and our president and COO, just fanboy over you as a native Chicagoan. Did I say that right? Chicagoan. Just in the downstairs room, watching him be like, I met you at the All-Star game. And you were like, which game? We went at 1987. You remembered the game that he was describing. It was really cool.
Well, it happened to be the All-Star game in Chicago. I'm originally from Chicago. And so it really brought back memories of not only playing in the game, but the one special memory that it brought back is that Mark Aguirre got married during the NBA All-Star game.
He was a teammate of yours, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was the only time that he can plan his wedding that we could all be there. So during that weekend, he got married in Chicago. We were all there, and we were able to he got married. We played in the All-Star game. We grew up in the west side of Chicago, and it was a great time.
That's awesome. Well, talk about memories, right? So let's talk. We're going to start a little bit with basketball, and then I want to talk about this business empire you have built, which, once again, when you think of those 5 forms of human currency, the 2 that generally are rewarded the most in youth are beauty and athletic prowess, right? And yet they often dissipate the fastest. Others tend to appreciate as you get older. You are one of the people that has superseded that, right? I'm not going to talk about your income because I don't want to get personal, but I bet you make more money now than in any year you ever played in the NBA, right?
That is true.
Right. So which is really cool, right? But when we think about the Detroit Pistons of my youth, right? Because I happen to grow up in New York City. Most people think for some reason I grew up in D.C. I lived there for a while, but I grew up in New York. And sadly for me, I've been a Knicks fan for most of my life, which has been a very difficult existence. Thank God I'm also a Yankees fan, so we sort of bang that out. We had a really fun conversation with one of our clients from Boston the other day at lunch. But the reality is that when you think about the Pistons, right, they were the bad boys of basketball, right? You guys were the bangers. You were the guys who came in and you were bad. And before you and I became friends, I always thought that was thrust upon you. Like you were bad and therefore you were labeled bad. But that's not really how it happened, was it?
No, so when we were coming up during the 80s, the Lakers and the Celtics were the 2 dynasties. And, and it was kind of it was an invite-only party to the championship that the Lakers and the Celtics always had, and the audience and the fans and everyone wanted to see the Lakers and the Celtics. And then we showed up to the party, and nobody kind of wanted us to come in. So we had to find a way to not only make the public want to see us, but also we had to find a way to make ourselves interesting. Because the Lakers were interesting, the Celtics were interesting, they had a story, what they call a narrative. Now, we knew nothing about a narrative, to be honest with you.
Oh, I must hear that word 1,000 times a day now. What's the narrative on this?
They had script writers, they had media following. We were a small market, Detroit, Chicago, Boston, LA, New York. Those were the big media markets. So it's okay, how are we going to get noticed? And the style of play that was being promoted back then in the NBA, it was, what can you do above the rim? So it was all about.
You're messing up my next question.
Oh, my fault, my bad. So yeah, we adapted the style of play that was different than the Lakers and the Celtics. However, it was very similar to the Lakers and the Celtics. The Celtics were known for their bruising style of play, their toughness, their mental toughness, their physicality. They take no prisoners, and the Lakers were Showtime, fast, glitz and glamour, fast.
Did you watch Showtime on?
Yeah, I'm watching it.
It's awesome, isn't it?
It's great entertainment.
I mean, it's really great. I'm sure it's not real, but it's really fun.
So we kind of became a little bit of both, and then we started marketing ourselves, and we got our script writers in Detroit, all media, to start, talking about the things that we do on the positive side. But what we learned from the Celtics was the mental edge of the game. So the psychology of the game, like psyching your opponent out, and then getting your script writers, the media, to kind of follow up on your messaging, what you were saying, and then you push it out. And so that's how we, and there were some labels that were kind of thrust upon us. When you think about sport, offense is always given the positive labels.
Right.
Defense is always given negative labels. We were a defensive team, so all the labeling that came to us were negative, right? So, and then, excuse me when I say this, but being black in America, now you understand stereotypes and how stereotypes can work for you or against you. So we took the stereotypes that in the labeling that was labeled against us, we turned it around and we used it, and thus the Bad Boys. And Scarface at that time had just come out. And there was a line in Scarface where...
You want to meet my little friend?
Not that one. That was Lambier's line. No, but there was a line where he was in the restaurant, and he goes, "All of you looking at me, you need a bad guy like me." Well, look at this. You're never going to see another bad guy like me.
That was a great line.
So say hello to the bad guy. That was our line.
That's awesome. And that's first of all, that's great. And to think that you guys built that as your marketing campaign, right?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, there's songs, bad boy, like you guys are playing that, you guys are really embracing that. When you think about the league at that time, right? So correct me, because I mean, you know league history far better than I do, right? But I know that it was sort of the Lakers, the Celtics, you guys were coming in, this kid had just joined the Chicago Bulls. Yep. I assume Larry Bird joined the Celtics at a similar time, because I know they sort of...
Magic and Bird came in at the
Magic and Bird came at the same time. See, thank you for correcting me. So you've got some big personalities there. You've got David Stern, who, whether you like him or you hate him, might be one of the greatest marketers in history.
Yeah.
And by the way, a little piece of breaking news, I'm just going to share this on your panel. Zeta closed the exclusive relationship to represent and market with the NBA yesterday.
Congratulations.
So we're very excited about that. Which, by the way, we got permission from them to say on your panel, because they love it.
Glad to break the news.
Right. But it's a very big deal for us. So we're very excited about that. So we love Adam Silver, too, who's also a marketing genius. Obviously chose very well. But when you think about David Stern, who really, I would say, helped to build the modern league, right? But he was not building the modern league with teams like Detroit, right? He wanted players above the rim, you say, right? He wanted Dr. J. He wanted Michael Jordan. Like, he wanted, you know, the perfect, and you said black, so I'll say the perfect, like, white guy in Larry Bird, right? So these were his characters, right?
Yes.
How did you guys fit into that type of a game?
Well, we didn't fit. We were kind of the outsider, and the game was being marketed, again, for taller players above the rim, and the brazen thing that David Stern did during the 80s, and if some of you are old enough in this audience to remember, back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was really a question of, will white America come to the arenas to see black players play? And I know we have black quarterbacks.
I mean, today it's hard to even believe.
It's hard to believe.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's hard to even believe it today.
Cover of Sports Illustrated. If you go back and you look it up, David Stern had the gall to say, you know what? I'm going to put it in everybody's face, and I'm going to let you get to know these players. Because once you get to know them, you get to hear their stories. He believed, and rightfully so, that America would give this NBA league a chance. And so we coming from Detroit, we're saying, well, we got a pretty authentic story in Detroit, because when you think about Detroit, at that time it was being marketed as the crime or the murder capital. And we were saying,
Well,
no.
was it marketed as that, or was it that?
It was being marketed as that, because really
That's a bad marketing campaign, by the way.
Well,
but keep going.
But it was being marketed as that really by, again, we looked at in terms of the labeling that was happening around us in Detroit.
Yep.
So all the negative labels and the negativity about Detroit. So we said, no, actually, all the cars that you drive
Yep.
started here in Detroit.
Right.
the music that you love started here in Detroit. And as a matter of fact, I do believe that we have a big stake in the claim of culture
Definitely.
from Detroit in terms of cars, music, and now sport. So introducing sport to it, okay, now we talk about Joe Louis, Max Milling. So, All Story had to get out, and getting it out and trying to find the gaps in the spaces to get it out, it came through sport. And culture is really transmitted and transferred through sport, music, and art. So we got Motown,
Right.
music. So, Aretha
That
Franklin.
other guy, Michael Jackson, started there, right? I mean, Motown.
Aretha Franklin, was coming to all games,
That's
singing.
cool.
And as a matter of fact, Mariah Carey, she broke in Detroit singing our national anthem.
Wow.
So coming up during that period of time, I know the Lakers and the Celtics started, David Stern wanted to market them, but we became the people's champ.
Right.
We became the groundswell that
Well,
everyone was
you
talking
guys also kept winning.
Kept winning. Winning helps.
Nothing
Winning helps.
beats winning, right? I mean, it's you guys had not
But it made a lot of people mad that we were winning.
really.
Yeah, because they didn't like the way we were winning.
Got it.
But they had to acknowledge that we were winning.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's hard not to say they won, right? It's like
Yeah. Well, they kind of ignored it.
until they couldn't.
But the people kept saying, well, what about the bad boys?
Right.
And it's still today. Some of you say, they go Lakers, Celtics, Bulls, and the people of today still say, well, wait a minute, there's a team that you missing that was Detroit and the bad boys.
Well, it's definitely not the Knicks.
We're working on that.
Oh God, I forgot you're on the board of MSG. I don't mean to be so insulting.
We're working on that.
Probably should have looked at my notes that I lost before I came up. But no, listen, nothing would make me happier than if the Knicks were to do well again. And I know they're planning a better year this year, right?
Yeah.
So, on to the next topic. When we think of disruption, right? You've sort of, your time in the NBA was also the time when the brand of the player begins to supersede the brand of the team and in many cases even the league, right? You've got Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Isiah Thomas, all these names begin to become their own brand. How did you see that happening, and how is it advanced today with, Steph Curry, and LeBron James? How's that happened, in your opinion?
I think by introducing the audience to the story of the players, and then the brand of basketball being marketed. And like I said, in the 80s, it was all about what you can do above the rim.
Right.
How high you can jump, and how fast you can run. It was about the athleticism. We in Detroit, because I'm a small guy, I didn't fit that model. And Lambeer was a jump shooting center,
Right.
who didn't fit, Kareem hook shot,
Right.
Moses Malone post move, Robert Perry. So we were everything opposite, right? But what we were able to do during that time is, like you say, win, but the changes and the disruption came from us winning, but also people getting to know us. And once they got to know us, and once they got to hear about Lambeer's story, when Lambeer said, the first time I was called a thug was when I was in the NBA. But my father makes more money than I do. He's the CEO of I think this corrugating boxing company that he.
By the way, those corrugated box company guys make shockingly large amounts of money.
Yeah. So Lambeer, I never forget. We were sitting at a press conference. He goes, "I've never been called a thug before in my life, but So putting that out front, letting people see it, and then the humor, understanding, what we were going up against and what the NBA itself was going up against, the people that were talking, now you were able to go back and relate to some of the stories of Bill Russell, Oscar Robertson, and sport then moved from the playing floor to society, and how do you make society better? How do you make people better? And then you brought it back to, okay, well, in sport, this is where you do have a level playing field. Because in sport, the Republicans come in, the Democrats come in, different people from different religions, different colors, so forth, and they sit in the arena for 2 hours.
It's great.
And everybody's cool. And they root for the team in red or they root for the team in blue.
Unless you're in Boston, but keep going.
I didn't say the team in green. And then when everybody walks out, that's when you get separated again.
Right.
So this is where sport has had a tremendous impact on society, trying to say and communicate the right words and the right values in the way we live in this country.
It's great. Well, as we've talked about, and as everybody who knows me know, I would love us to continue to find more commonality in this country, and look at friends and say, that doesn't matter. They're a friend, and sport brings people together in that way.
Yeah, go to Detroit.
Yeah, well, we'll go to Detroit. I'm gonna say. Let's pivot. The business, I say empire, but the businesses that you have collectively built are very sizable. But when I think of Isiah Thomas, I might not think about a incredibly high value champagne at a common price. I wouldn't think of hemp as a product. I wouldn't think of popcorn as a product. Now, I sort of knew you were the co-founder of the Raptors, the only expansion team in basketball ever outside the United States, which I think won the championship within 10, 15 years of you guys founding it. Thank God you're with the Knicks now. But when you think about those businesses, they are disparate, and yet they're all in your portfolio. Let's talk about your business career. What was the first launch? Was it popcorn that was sort of the first business launch?
Actually, the first business launch was some of you are old enough here to remember American Speedy Printing.
I remember that. Yeah.
So a partner of mine by the name
Pre-Kinko's.
of Pre-Kinko's.
Yeah.
That's why we got out of it. A partner of mine, Rick Innertome, he and his family started Intercom computer stores.
Yeah.
And we looked at the printing business, and the thought was you would infuse technology into an old mom and pop printing business, and thus, you would start copying and everything else. We bought this company out of bankruptcy called American Speedy Printing, had 700 quick print chains across the United States, turned it around, sold it, and we sold it at the right time because
Perfect.
Kinko's came along, quick, like out of the boom, and they were on every college campus and everything else. And then, I remember my econ teacher saying, invest in things that you like. Well, when I was growing up on the west side of Chicago, we grew up extremely poor. So popcorn was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? It was cheap, it was good. And
Popcorn is good, by the way.
yes, it is.
It's good.
So I co-founded a popcorn company called Indiana Popcorn. Where the Hoosiers at in the house? Got the Hoosiers in the house. So named it Indiana Popcorn. Got the red bag, and if you remember, popcorn used to be in clear plastic bags. We were the first company to start putting colors on the bag. Now when you walk into a store, you see colors on every bag. Started that and ended up selling that, moved out of that, and then went into the champagne space. But, again, listen to your econ teacher and say invest in things that you like. Love popcorn.
So what you're saying is you drink heavily and eat popcorn. Like you're in the, and we'll get into hemp in a moment.
They
but,
do kind of go together, you know what I mean?
Let's talk about it, champagne, right? So you're in France. Mm-hmm. You're at a tasting of champagne. How do you go from having a glass of this champagne to owning part of the business, owning the U.S. operations? Like, how does that happen?
So after I sold the popcorn company, was looking for the next venture to go into, and everyone was going into the spirit space. Diddy had done extremely well with Ciroc. Clooney had done well with tequila, and everyone was like, you should look at spirits. So of course I looked at wines, I looked at vodkas, tequilas, but I really came to the conclusion that it's kind of crowded in these spaces.
That's for sure.
And
if you look at Instagram, it's crowded.
and I'm like, I don't know if I can compete. Honestly, I was like, I don't know if I can compete in these spaces. And so looked one tier up, and you looked in the champagne space, and you quickly noticed that a new champagne hadn't hit the market in like 100 years.
Wow.
So went over to France, met the family, the Cherlon family, 9 generations of champagne makers, talked to them about buying the vineyards, but quickly learned they won't let an American own land in Champagne. So we bought the rights to all the grapes that come off the land. Then understanding that...
Is that true?
Yes.
They will not allow an American to own real estate in the Champagne region of France?
So I am the...
French.
How about this?
Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm totally getting in trouble for that later. We have a big office in Paris. Where's Flo? Flo, I was kidding. Just kidding.
I won't compound it. I'll just go with
Thank you.
and so so during the tasting, I knew nothing about first press, second press, third press. And during the tasting, I was like, this is kind of sweet. My wife was with me. She was like, this is too sweet. And can we lower the sugar content? And the champagne maker, Thomas, said, no, the American palate craves sugar, and we've been told that we have to give it more sugar.
Wow.
In the champagnes. And
know your audience.
yeah, and I said, well, I don't think the American audience has ever been given a choice of 0 and low sugar champagnes. He goes, no, it won't work. And I said, well, tell me like the difference between second, third, and first press. He goes, well, third press is used for making vinegar and perfume. I go, what? He goes, yeah, that's why we put so much sugar in it.
That's funny.
And then the second press is what we sell to everyone in the United States. You really don't get first press. So that's why I was like, okay, I got a niche. Opportunity. America's not getting first press. We got champagne. I have been spending a lot of money on champagne. I was one of them guys who walk in.
Well, you're spraying it in the locker room every year. That's expensive.
Exactly. And by the way, it's free advertising.
Right.
No one. There was no champagne being marketed in the NBA to sports teams.
Interesting.
So
you'd start sending cases to the finalists?
Yes, that's what we started doing.
It's really smart.
And then we formed a relationship with the NBA players, the 450 NBA players. You're with the league, so
right.
The Players Association has the 450 players.
I think we have somebody from the Players Association speaking later today.
Okay. So the 450 players actually are partners with me in the champagne space. And now this is where my competitor, gotta give them credit, Moet, Vouv, they're competitors in the space. They got really smart. They said, okay, well, we'll partner with the league as opposed to partnering with the players. So several years ago, you saw where champagne was being sprayed in the locker room. Now the celebration is out on the floor.
Because the players choose what happens in the floor, and the league chooses what happens in the locker room?
So I'm a former president of the Players Association. Yeah. So the players, we own the locker room.
So got it. So it's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
On the floor, they're doing the league-sponsored wine.
Yeah.
And in the locker room, they're doing what they want.
What they want.
And they want yours.
They did.
They did.
But, when money comes in, some players get paid to, do a little bit. So,
Well,
but it all works
with
out.
The shoes, too,
yeah.
right?
So
they pick different shoes.
But what we're finding, we're the fastest growing champagne in the United States right now, and we're the #1 rated first press zero low sugar champagne in the United States right now. So just like the bad boys, right, we are in demand from the people, but from a marketing budget standpoint, we don't have the marketing dollars to compete with the big boys. So, you know, it's lips to liquid for us.
Lips to liquid.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah,
That is good.
Lips to liquid, and once you taste it, you know.
Well, I will say,
There's no going back.
Yeah, I don't generally drink champagne. My wife loves it. I generally drink red wine and a lot of vodka. But I tasted your champagne because, you know, for those of you who don't know, it's also our 15th anniversary this week. So we're sort of hybriding Zeta live with Zeta 15, and people are like, well, why are you putting those together? I was like, because I saw the T&E bill for separate, right? So it's like, we're going to fly everybody from the world here this week, and then 3 weeks later, we're flying them back. I'm like, no, let's put that together. Chris Greiner, our CFO, is very happy about that decision. But we are opening bottles of your champagne tonight to celebrate Zeta 15, and I tasted it, and it is really good.
Thank you. Thank you.
So with the 20 seconds, and we should have extra time because I went shorter, but with the time we have left, just when you think about a marketing audience, I mean, some of the things you've talked about casually are incredibly disruptive from an innovation perspective. Sending free champagne to the locker room. Yeah. Like, that's really, that's product placement, right? That's social media placement before social media existed, right? Putting popcorn into a red bag instead of a clear bag. Like, these are very, very differentiated things. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get into your hemp business, which is interesting, and your insurance business, which is also interesting. But when you think about that, what advice do you have to the audience on disruption and marketing? Just what's the high level?
I would say for me, it's always trying to think with my 16, 17-year-old mind when you believe that you could do anything.
By the way, if you talk to my wife, she says I still act 16 or 17, so I could be good on that.
Yeah, but you know, but like, don't be afraid to take the challenge and look at the mountain. And you know, when we were that young, we would all say, yeah, I climb that. And the older person would look at you and be like, well, you quite don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, you're nuts.
You go, no, really, I can climb that, right? And then you just take off and you start climbing it.
That's great.
And so that's kind of what I've done in business, but I've also remembered the team aspect of it in terms of gathering a group together, focusing on a goal, having a vision, and then seeing if we can really do it.
Right.
And understanding there are going to be wins and losses, there are going to be ups and downs, but then you got to, you know, you stick together and say, hey, no, we can do this. And the most important thing is if you got partners in the business with you, both of you can't be down at the same time, and both of you can't be up high at the same time. And we're getting the wave, we got to cut it in the back. But this is kind of like the Oscars where I'm like, no, I'm not cutting.
Where's the music?
I'm gonna take some
we
more
want
time.
the music.
No,
All right.
really, thank you for having me.
Ladies and
Appreciate it.
gentlemen, Isiah Thomas. That was awesome.